Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to my second homeland of Sweden, and we're also going to go back to my home county of Skåne in the very south of the country. Now we're returning to a brewery that's featured on the channel quite a few times before. These guys are these days a very well established and well respected name within the Skånsk and Swedish craft beer scene, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're most definitely best known for their different kinds of fruity, juicy, smoothie, Nordic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is a style that I haven't had from this particular brand before, but I have had it from one of the other brands in the collective that they were part of, so it's a style that I know they can do very well, and we'll explain just exactly what we meant by that in the video. But yeah, it's one of their fairly recent releases as of the time of filming, which is September 2025, and I'm glad that I'm able to review one of these for you here on the channel, because this is a brewery that I have missed quite a lot actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head to Sweden. We're going to go to my home county of Skåne in the very south of the country, and to be specific, we are going to go to a little place called Aarhus, which is a little bit to the northeast of Malmö. So that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Elm 11. This particular beer is called Last Signal Home. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, we haven't had this style from the Elm 11 brand before, but of course Elm 11 was previously part of the Molecule Brewing Collective, and of course that was where you had Nerd, Chad Beer and Elm 11 together. But Chad Beer and Elm 11 have now merged together, and I have had a few hazy IPAs from the Chad Beer brand, so I'm guessing the recipes will be kind of following on in the same vein from that. But yeah, this is one that I picked up at the Hansa Systembolaget in Malmö when I was there a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I just wanted an Elm 11 beer and saw that they had one of the IPAs and thought, well, let's give this a try and see what it's all about. So yeah, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, this one, Citra and Nectaron hops in this one. So yeah, definitely cool to return to these guys again after what feels like a good long while. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done up from Elm 11 before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regular at the moment because I'm working my way through the Swedish beers that I brought back from the summer. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Elm 11 once again then. So, Elm 11, as I've mentioned to you before, were founded in Malmö in Skåne in the south of Sweden, and the main man behind this company was originally Anders Kvist. So he started his brewing project back in 2016, and he says that he views brewing his beer as his type of artistic expression. So his interest in beer started when his friend bought him what he called a non-industrial lager beer, and he was just blown away. And soon after this, his girlfriend bought him a cheap beer kit where you could add the water, and he felt that, you know, it just must be possible to do this so much better, and it was this that actually pushed him into all-grain home brewing. So he took part in various competitions after a while, and then he joined the Minus Ep Collective, which was in the basement of the Bishop's Arms Gustav Alstoy in Malmö, and it was there that he sold his first commercial beers. But the name Elm 11 comes from where he lived, which was Almbacksgatan 11. So Alm, of course, is the translates into English as elm, as in the species of tree. But this is just something that kind of stuck with him from his home brewing days, and you know, it does have a little bit of a ring to it, to be honest with you, Elm 11. But production was very small over the first few years, only a few thousand litres, and later he started brewing in the Nerd, Chad and Lilla Ölfabriken brewery in Rosengård in Malmö, and he had several Systembolaget releases over 2020. Originally they were brewing a few IPAs, but mostly focusing on sour beers, and he says that he wanted to kind of keep experimenting with things going forward with the brewery. But then, in March of 2021, a new collective called Molecule Brewing was announced. This included Elm 11, Nerd Brewing and Chad Beer, and they set up their brewery in Arlöv, which started off with a 1,500 litre brew kit. But Nerd left the Molecule Brewing Collective in mid-2024, and after this the Chad Beer brand was dissolved, and the IPAs released under this brand were moved over to Elm 11, and so the company is now led by both Anders and Chad. So Chad Beer was originally founded by Australian Chad Payton back in 2015 along with his wife Lisa. He had previously been a geochemist and was a long-time home brewer back in Australia, and he first encountered craft beer back in 2002 when he was in Idaho in the US, and then he began to experiment with his home brewing after that back in Melbourne. But apparently he also made his own malt for a period of time, but he decided to stick with the brewing instead, and then he got a research job in Copenhagen in Denmark, but lived on the other side of the water in Sweden. And originally these guys were gypsy brewers, but then in 2015 they set up a little 400 litre brewhouse in Svedala, which is just outside of Malmo, and the first beers were brewed there in December. But in 2016 they moved over to the Lilla Ölfabriken brewery in Rosengård, and that is where Elm 11 and Chad Beer first kind of crossed paths, if you like. So yeah, that is everything we can really say about the origins of Elm 11 and Chad Beer, of course. The only other thing to add is that as of September 2025, when we're filming this review for you, there is about 150 beers have been released under the Elm 11 name, and I think there was maybe about another 30 or 40 had been released under the Chad Beer brand as well. So maybe it's right to say that this brewery has produced in the region of 200 different beers. But yeah, as I say, that's everything I can really tell you about them for the moment. I've not seen if they've been doing any of the big imperial stouts and stuff like that, but we'll just need to see how that develops going forward. But yeah, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untapped and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So once again, you can see the artwork on this one is a little bit different from what we've seen from Elm 11 before, but it kind of makes sense, to be honest with you, since this is one of the IPAs rather than the sour beers. If you like, this one's got the more kind of silvery sort of thing to it, so I'm wondering if they're going to make different series of these beers. But like we said earlier, this one is brewed with Citra and Nectaron hops. Gold top on the can there. There you can also see on the side the Elm 11 rocket and things like that. And of course they've got the kind of black metal sort of artwork at the side, or the black metal text on the side there, which I thought was quite interesting. When I actually got this beer, I thought the name of this one was Earth is Out There Somewhere, but yeah, upon trying to look for the Untapped page for it, that proved not to be the case. But yeah, Last Signal Home is the name, so that was a wee bit confusing with this can, I have to admit. But yeah, Citra and Nectaron we know fairly well. Citra, of course, American hop, 14% alpha acid, so there'll be lots of lovely juicy mangoey notes and a wee bit of a lemon limey character in a New England IPA. Nectaron is a New Zealand hop, about 15 or 16% alpha acid if I remember correctly. A lot of peach and pineapple and stuff like that. So we're really expecting quite a nice big kind of tropical hit from this New England IPA. But yeah, let's get it out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I'm very curious about this one, I have to say, because it's been a while since I had one of the Chad Brewing IPAs. So I think that'll do for the moment while we have a look at the appearance and things, and we'll put the rest in a little bit later on. So yeah, with about 60% of the beer poured and into the glass, I think we can say that it looks pretty nice actually. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one, we can see that it poured with about 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. Some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, a few lighter, foamier ones going up towards the surface. But yeah, looks pretty nice. That head will disappear quite quickly and leave just a kind of thin foamy layer. But yeah, it's got a lovely kind of very bright yellow sort of mango juice colour to it, this beer. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that really is just what their appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put in the beer will affect its colour as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to the IPA style umbrella, in honesty. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. It's got a decent level of haze in it for an 8%er, but it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of 8%ers that I've come across. So remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. This can vary from beer to beer and brewery to brewery and so on. So yeah, I like that with this one. It looks very, very nice, I have to say, and quite appealing. But I think we've said everything we really need to about the appearance of this beer, in honesty, so we can go on and have a little look at the aroma and see what we have here. So yeah, let's do that then. Let's go for it. Oh, right, okay. So, for me, there's quite a distinctive, like, oaty character to this one. But the wheat comes out a little bit later on as well. But yeah, lovely big juicy fruity notes. The malty backbone certainly showing up as well. Nice bright green component. Yeah, it's got what you want from this style, we can safely say that. So yeah, when it comes to the New England IPAs, for me there's sort of 6 elements to think about with these when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of things. So yeah, we have the kind of farmhousey yeasty type character and the rye lean and grainy side of things. Those 2 elements are a bit more common in the New England brewed New England IPAs. Then we've got the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things in this one, or in all of these beers as well. So for me, what I would say with this one is that it seems to be leaning a little bit more toward the kind of more oaty and wheaty side of things with the barley malt in there. So I think it's kind of going for that Trinity approach. There's not too much in the way of kind of sweeter elements coming out of this beer either, in honesty. So yeah, that's worth keeping in mind. But yeah, I like that. I like the way that goes together with this one, I have to say. So for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got some lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there, that's for sure. There's a little bit of kind of woody character coming out of it as well. So yeah, white bready bread crust, a little bit of woody character, some Jacob's cream cracker notes there also. I always get these little things in the background of the beer. But then yeah, little touch of wholemeal brown bread, but again, that's very, very minimal. Lots of fluffy, fresh white bread from the barley malt, of course. And then on top of that, you get the more dense, wheaty white bread coming out of the beer. So yeah, for me, the wheaty white bread, I would say, at the back of the nose, it's got a little bit more kind of bitiness to it. So yeah, a little bit more bitiness in there. Then further forward on the nose, it feels a little bit smoother, in all honesty. And then above that, you start to get the oaty side of the beer. And the oats in these beers are always quite interesting. So for me, the oatiness in these beers are often a sort of rough indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. It's kind of rule of thumb, but it tends to work actually. You've got subtle differences as well between European oats, which are a bit more creamy, and North American oats, which I find are a bit more porridgey. So it's a fairly decent rule of thumb, we can say that at least. But yeah, the oaty notes in this one, I think the more that you smell of this beer, the more you get some of the creaminess out of the oats, but you can certainly smell the little drier bits in there, and I think this beer will probably be about 2 and a bit months old, something like that. But yeah, on top of that, you start to get a little bit of a more kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sweetness out of the beer, which I think is really nice. So yeah, Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch in there, a little bit of McVitie's Digestive Biscuit as well. And yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice. I think you do get more sweetness out of this one the more that you smell of it, in fairness. So yeah, I think the way that that goes together in this one is really quite nice. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, I would say it's you know, you've got all these things at the back of the nose. I think we've covered the malty middle of the nose as well, but I think at the back of the nose, when you get the yeasty side of this beer, it's quite interesting. It's like mostly kind of white bready, I would say. So the yeasty part of this beer, for me, it's got a little bit of a kind of more sweet brown bready character at its core, a little bit of a fluffier white bread as well, and then yeah, there's a wee bit of a more kind of white bready bread crusty character to it also. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, all in all, the way that that goes together, I think, is pretty lovely, to be honest. The yeasty character in this beer just adds and sort of smoothens out some of the bready nature that this beer has. So I'm just quite curious to see how this will play out in the flavour. But yeah, I think a lot of nice kind of white bready, oaty, wheaty notes in there. I think it's quite well balanced, just with a little touch of kind of Werther's Original type quality in the aroma there. But let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer then. So as I've mentioned in many IPA reviews before, there are 3 types of hoppings that you can do with these beers. So you can do early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you the vast majority of your bitterness and a deeper, danker green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very bright green component. Then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, is all about flavour and aroma, and again it gives you a very sort of bright green component, I would say. So yeah, New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're softer and more juicy. West Coast IPAs use all 3, which is why they're deeper, danker, and more oily. So yeah, more bitter as well is the thing. So yeah, with this beer, in terms of green component, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there, but that's very, very minimal. Maybe a little bit of woody character as well, but there's some lovely floral aromaticity. There's also, there's some lovely floral aromaticity in there. Not too spicy actually, but yeah, you've got some fruity, you've got some kind of fruity notes at the front of the nose, but behind that, of course, you get that wet, freshly cut grass. So the green component's kind of what you would expect from this style, in all honesty. So yeah, I do like how this goes together, frankly. Its green component is pretty nice. Now the fruity side of this one, if you know these hops, it's kind of doing what you would expect. So yeah, there's lovely, big, juicy mango type notes in there. So there's a big there's a little touch of peachy sharpness on the top there, but lovely big, juicy, mango-y notes coming out of this one. Softer apricot underneath, pineapple as well. There's something else in there that I can't quite place, maybe just a little tiny touch of like orange or something. But then yeah, at the very front of the nose, there's just a wee touch of a kind of lemony, limey type character coming out of the beer. So yeah, I really do like how that pieces together in this one. So yeah, the way that all of that sort of just goes together, I think, is is really, really quite nice. Yeah, but mostly a kind of soft, tropical, juicy character in this one for me, and it smells great. So as I always say, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. I think the other thing I was picking up in this one that wasn't coming to mind was a bit of passion fruit. So yeah, I think the mango and the passion fruit will come from the Citra, and the other softer notes will be coming from the Nectaron in this one. So yeah, let's just have a taste of this and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Last Signal Home, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Elm 11 in Arlöv in Malmö in Skåne, back in my second motherland of Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers. That's actually really pretty nice. You know, the last time I had one of the Chad IPAs, it was quite, it felt just a little bit kind of more raw than this. I wondered if they'd been using the right yeast or something like that. It had a wee bit of that sort of more woody, slightly cardboardy kind of flavour in it. But this one actually seems really nice and really kind of refined in a way. It is definitely more oaty leaning, and the wheat obviously is in there as well, which we were picking up from the aroma. But I think this goes together really pretty nicely. I think it's a lovely, lovely beer. So thumbs up to Elm 11 and Chad beer, if we can still say that in this instance. I think this is really, really well done. It's definitely an improvement. I think it was what was it they were calling those ones? Specification or species or something like that? A speciation, maybe? They were calling the Chad ones. This just comes across as a little bit refined. And of course, I've been away from Sweden for about 2 years, so it kind of shows you they've been gradually improving their recipes and things. So yeah, kudos to them for this. Elm 11 can certainly produce some very nice hazies these days, so thumbs up from me. And I will say, within that hazy category, it is a really, really soft, kind of creamy, juicy character that you're getting out of this one. And I'll just say, from what I'm getting in the mouthfeel on the oats, I think this beer is about 2 and a bit months old, maybe pushing the 3 months. You can feel a little bit of the dryness of the oats coming out. I can imagine this one would be like really top class on tap when it's just new, of course, or they'll maybe drink it. I always say, you know, you need to let these beers sit in the can about a month for them to get into their prime. This one is just kind of coming off the back end of its prime, I would say. You can feel that, but even at this stage, it is really, really damn nice. So thumbs up to Elm 11 for this one. So yeah, let's just break down the flavour of this beer then and describe it for you that little bit more in depth. So we'll go to the middle third of your palate. The backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. So yeah, that forms the backbone of your beer, lovely fresh white bready bread crust. As you move further forward then, you've got a little touch of woody character coming out of the beer, so you can feel that there. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust, little touch of woody character, Jacob's cream cracker, then on top of that you start to get the more grainy wholemeal brown bready sort of thing coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think is really, really nice. But yeah, on top of that little bit of wholemeal brown bready character, you've got a more fluffy, fresh, white bready character coming out of there. So yeah, fluffy, fresh, white bready character in there from the barley malt. And that does give you a wee bit of like dryness into the aftertaste, I'll say that. So yeah, fluffy, fresh, white bready character in there. Then above that, you get the more dense, wheaty, white bready note coming out of this one. So yeah, the more dense, wheaty, white bready character just sits on top of that there. And I've often said sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, you've got more kind of like oaty creaminess further, you've got more smooth character from the white bread, from the white wheaty bread further forward on the palate. Then you've got more kind of bitiness from the wheat a little bit further back. But yeah, on top of that more dense wheaty white bready layer, you start to get the oaty notes coming out of the beer. So on top of that, for me, yeah, on top of that for me, there's a more dense, how would you say, yeah, there's a more dense, you get the more dense kind of oaty character in there. So in the middle of your palette, you've got that, what do you say, you've got a kind of circle there. So actually, if you go on top of the wheaty white bread, if you go down the middle line of your tongue, there's a more dense oaty kind of creamy note in there. So you can feel that dense creamy oaty character. Then as you move further out toward the edges of your palette, it's got a little bit more of a kind of, there's a bit of the drier side of the oats coming out of this one. So that's pretty nice in this beer as well. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palette there, you can feel there's a little tiny circle in the middle of your palette where you get a wee bit of like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of note coming out of the beer. Then just going round that, it's a little bit of a more, there's a wee bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, you can feel that little bit of sweetness there lingering into the aftertaste, and there's a wee bit of the kind of oaty creaminess and some of the dryness there too. But I think we've covered the middle third of your palate at this point. So yeah, I think that goes together pretty well. So let's leave it at that for that and go to the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you go, if you go there, you can feel that little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the barley malt white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on top, the kind of more bitey sort of thing. Then the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel the kind of white bready bread crust in there, the cracker sits on top of it. You've got a more, you've got that kind of fluffier, fresh, that fluffier wholemeal brown bready sort of character in this one, which you can feel is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then above that you've got the fresh, fluffy white bready character in there, which again feels a little bit lighter, taller, drier and more airy. So you've got those bready layers in there, and then on top of that, on the back third of your palate, you can feel the wheaty bitiness just kind of sitting in there. So that lingers into the aftertaste and it does give you a wee bit of bite. But above everything else, on that back third of your palate, you've got the more yeasty type character coming out of the beer. So yeah. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer then, at its core, it's got a more dense, like wholemeal brown bready character, which has a wee bit of graininess to it. And as you come further out from that, it's got an even kind of drier and more grainy brown bready character. Then the very edge of the yeasty character is like a slightly sweeter white bready note, which I really do quite like as well. Then yeah, it's kind of surrounded by a little bit of a fresh white bready bread crust in there. It's almost a little bit floury in a sense, actually, as in the flour that you get on in the bakery table or whatever. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that going on there, but that yeasty character almost gives the beer just a little touch of like grainy spiciness into the aftertaste in a sense. But yeah, that adds a little bit of dryness into the aftertaste. But I think the wheaty bitiness and the oaty creaminess and just a little touch of the sweetness, those are the elements that are lingering into the aftertaste with this beer from the malty and yeasty side of things. So yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and squashes together that little bit more. And then yeah, as we move into, I think that's all we can say about the malty and yeasty side of things. So let's focus on the hoppy part of the beer then. So back corners of the palate, you definitely get a little touch of like earthiness out of this one. So there's definitely that little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a wee bit of an almost woody, herbally sort of thing, and a wee bit of like pine resiny character as well. But then yeah, as you push further forward from this one, as you push further forward along the sides of your palate there, you get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity, and it's a wee touch spicy. Then round the front curve of your tongue, it's just that little bit lighter and more grassy. There's a wee touch of zestiness to it as well, in fact. So yeah, The way that this one goes together in the green caplet, I think, is pretty nice and pretty normal for the style. So let's round off our tasting section then with a wee look at the front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the white bread in the middle, then the more wheaty white bread on top. Then yeah, the base of the front third of your palate, the white bready bread crust, the Jacob's cream cracker, the wholemeal brown bread, the fluffier white bread, the more dense wheaty sort of thing, and then yeah, the kind of oaty creamy character that goes on top of that. Then you have that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, for me, in the back half of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a layer of tropical fruits in there. So on the top, you're getting a little bit of a sharper kind of peach, which I think is going to come from, I think both the Citra and the Nectaron can give you that. So there's a wee bit of that in there. Then you've got big juicy mango and the softer passion fruit underneath. I think the passion fruit's the one for me that lingers into the aftertaste, but as you come further forward on that front third of your palate, there's a softer kind of apricot-y type character in there. And then there's a bit of pineapple on top of that, I would say, but then yeah, into the front half of that front third of your palate, I get quite a little bit of lime out of this one, which is quite interesting. I've never really got so much. I think Nectaron's not going to give you that. I think that's mostly going to be the Citra, but yeah, for me it's quite limey in that front half of the front third of your tongue, to be honest, which I really didn't expect in all honesty. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, in honesty, it's quite an interesting one, this. I think actually more of the yeasty character, more of the kind of grainy and crackery side of the yeasty character, which I wasn't picking up too much earlier, I think that pushes its way out into the aftertaste with this beer too. So that's another interesting element to think about with this one. So yeah, some pretty interesting stuff with this beer, I have to say. So it gets a thumbs up from me. I really like this one, actually. It feels a bit more refined, as I say, than the other Chad beer speciation, or whatever they were called, IPAs that I had a couple of years ago. So it just kind of goes to show you they are improving as time goes on, which is nice to see. But yeah, I think we've covered everything we really need to say about the flavour of this beer. So let's round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, the mouthfeel of this beer, it's quite, I would say that it's mid-bodied. The carbonation in this one is, yeah, it's mid-bodied. The carbonation is really quite smooth in this, actually. But this beer has a wee bit of a dryness into the aftertaste, but it's kind of smoother and silkier in the beginning, and it starts to show you a wee bit more sweetness as well. I think the IBU in this is a fairly standard, like 30, maybe 40 at a push IBUs. And as we say, the malt base, it's a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and there's a wee bit of creamy sweetness just on top of that. And then yeah, you've got the lovely tropical fruity notes, but there's a wee bit more citrusy character, shows its head into the aftertaste with this beer too. So all in all, quite an interesting hazy double, or New England double, whatever you want to call it, this one. And definitely cool to return to this style with the Molecule Brewery, or Elm 11, or Chad beer, however we're going to label this one. But yeah, it will be Elm 11 going forward, of course. So yeah, I've enjoyed this one. It's been nice to return to these guys after what feels like quite a wee while. So let's leave it at that for this one. This was The Last Signal Home, an 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Elm 11 in Arlöv near Malmö in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Elm 11 as well, and we will no doubt continue, we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Elm 11's social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Ciao just now.